In this video, I'm going to show you how I edited this photo here that I shot back in 2017. The technique I used in this image was actually called time blending. Now, what time blending is, if you don't aware already, is actually where you take elements from different periods of the same scene and then you merge it into one image. You can actually go pretty extensive with this technique and actually get multiple different images, like 10 different images, pulling elements from each 10 images, merging it into one. In this example though, I'm only just taking 2 images. The first image I'm going to take was actually more in the red sunset hour, where you get more of a red warm tone from the sky. Whereas the other image that I'll be merging it with is actually during the blue hour, where the building lights now start turning on. Because as you can see, back in the sunset hour, you actually don't get many building lights coming on. And that is partly for 2 reasons. It's not late enough in the evening for the building lights to actually come on. And the other side of it as well, there's enough ambient light in the sky, which is then not really making the building lights as obviously turned on. But now in the blue hour, the sun is actually completely set. You still got some residual light in the sky causing that blue. And that is just enough light to allow the building lights to come through a lot more. So the idea for me is to keep this as the base image where I get the redness and warmth from the sky, merging it with this one to get the building lights to achieve this look here. Because as you can see in this image, you don't get the building lights coming through. As you can see for the base edits on these images, I'm only just doing a couple bits on the sliders like exposure, contrast, and so forth. You can see the settings just here on the right. I'm not going to go too extensive into this part because I just kept my edit very basic. You may want to go further with that and add presets or play with the tone curves or any of the HSL. But for me personally, I got the look that I want just by playing with the sliders, and I'm perfectly fine with this. Now that you've done your base edits on both images, all you have to do is highlight both images and then right click, edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. Lightroom will do its thing and move them both into Photoshop as layers. As you can see here on the bottom right, there's 2 layers where you see the images are perfectly aligned on top of each other. It's important when you shoot this, you're shooting on a tripod, and when you're shooting on a tripod to make sure it's sturdy and untouched. At the time when I was doing this, I was actually also shooting a time lapse at the same time. So for one shot, I kind of got the best of both worlds. I managed to get a time lapse out of this, plus I get to do a time blended photo. So it's a very simple principle right now, and that you just highlight the top layer, add a layer mask, and now you just want to simply brush in the elements of where you want the building lights to come through. Again, you can be as detailed as you like with this. You can go as crazy as you like when it comes to doing this. You can actually pull out as much detail or as little detail as you want. It's entirely up to you. I personally just feel a rough guideline of bringing back some of those building lights back into the shot just adds so much. As you can see here, I didn't update this one because I got enough building lights coming through, but I also prefer the warmth of the building in the original baseline image. Because if I was just to brush over this now, it cools it down too much, and I feel like it takes away some of that warmth, which is kind of what I want to keep within the shot. So if I just undo that to bring the warmth back, and then just over here as well, here's where it gets a little bit tricky because the base image, because of the building lights, it kind of almost blows it out a little bit. So what I'm going to do here instead, I'm going to leave it mostly as the base image, but I'm going to change the opacity down to about 50%. So I'm not going to bring all of the lights through, just some. So it's just to bring some of that lighting just through a little bit, but it's not blowing out the highlights as it was in the base image. I'm just going to deactivate the bottom layer just so you can see where I have brushed in some of the elements. And now when I close this, hit save, it's now taking me back into Lightroom. Now I'm back in Lightroom, I'm just going to play with the image just a tiny bit more. So first off, I want to correct the vertical lines because I don't know if you can tell here on the image, but they're just slightly off angle. So if I was to press Command 7, here we are in the transform module, and here you can see vertical. If I was to click that, this should correct by automation all the vertical lines. It's just touched it just a little bit. I don't know if you saw that. It's very minor, but it was only a little bit off. And then from here, I'm going to do a few more local adjustments. I'm just going to warm up this area here. I feel like it looks a little bit too cold in the shadows. So if I was just to raise that, exposure and contrast just a touch, probably about just under half a stop, a little bit of contrast, and then add a lot of warmth. With the warmth, I'm going to need to add some magenta back, just because there's obviously a lot of natural green within that part. Just going to crush the blacks just a little bit, because I don't want to bring up too much noise as I'm raising this. Maybe just a touch more exposure. I'm also going to add a little bit more to the sky. So I'm going to select the sky. Just add a little bit more saturation, a bit more contrast. Bit more dehaze and clarity. Just I really want that sky to pop. I feel the water looks a little bit flat, so I'm going to add a linear gradient here. And what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to lower the exposure, because I just didn't want it to be a flat tone, but I also want more emphasis into the center of the image. So I just want to darken this area here, just to keep the focus a little bit more on the building and the sunset. As you can see, all the vertical lines are straight. I'm just going to touch the exposure, just probably like a third of a stop. I feel like the framing as a 3x2 probably doesn't work very well with this type of image. I'm going to actually bring it down to 69. Give a bit more of that width. I'm just going to adjust the angle just ever so slightly, because although the automation did a pretty good job, I still feel it was just a touch off. And there's the final image I'm going to land on. Just a reminder, this is the original image that we started off with. It's a decent photo as is, to be fair. It's just losing a little bit of punch, which we added back in through the time blending technique. And with the addition of the local adjustments of the sky, the little bit of warmth down the bottom right, straightening the lines, giving it a 60:9 crop, this is the final image. If you do manage to try this technique out and you upload your photo to Instagram, by all means, give me a tag, send it to me. I'd love to check it out. Overall, much appreciated. Cheers for watching.